and welcome to a new episode of The Glittering Bell Jar. We are so excited because not only is this our fourth episode, we're officially out of that little launch phase, newborn phase of a podcast life. There was a big reunion just recently for Harry Potter fans around the world, and we want to talk about it today. And we're going to cover some episodes. We're just going to do a ton. We're going to try and pack it all into our normal 45-minute episode length, but please forgive us if we run long because the reunion was lovely and we want to make sure we give that some space too.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to talk about the reunion. I am sure lots of Harry Potter fans around the world got the same chills that I did and just cannot wait to hear about it and talk about it.
Okay, so before we dive into talking about the reunion, I want to ask, how are you, Brie?
Oh, thank you. I am good. We had a bit of a COVID scare at my house, but I don't think I have it. Still waiting on results, so I cannot do anything, but that's okay. I'm here with you, so I feel like I'm doing something.
And everyone, for the record, we're virtual. We're
Yes.
not in the same room. We're definitely in two different rooms, far apart.
Yes.
So no worries about community spread through our podcast.
Absolutely not. I had my New Year's with my niece, and that was fun. Yeah. How are you? How was your New Year's?
Good, thanks. It was laid back. We are recording this just after the new year of 2022. If you're listening at a different time in time, we hung out. We had a really good dinner. We played some Mario Kart Wii and went to bed early.
Love that. Super fun.
Yep. But speaking of the new year, that was the day that the 20th anniversary reunion for Harry Potter was released on HBO Max.
Yep.
All the HBOs. I don't know if
Yep.
it was anyone. If you saw it on Real TV, you were very lucky. Real TV. So let's talk about it. You saw it. You told me that I needed to see it. So
Yep.
What did you think?
Oh, man. I absolutely loved it. So I watched the first 45 minutes with my niece. She is 8. She has seen and read all of the Harry Potters. But she wasn't super into it. So I had to pause and then rewatch it today. And I got to see all of it. And it just brought back all the feels for me, right? From the first time you ever read it to watching the movies to standing in line. It brought back watching them talk about it and get all the nostalgia. It just made me get my nostalgia. What about you? How did you like it?
Yeah, it was really interesting to watch because they're pretty much our age. The main actors are all pretty much our age. Mm-hmm. And I really loved how they mixed in their interviews and their conversations with footage of the phenomenon that was Harry Potter when it was happening. I mean, I have chills now talking about it. Almost everyone seems to have found the series when it was the Prisoner of Azkaban. Everyone, all the actors, everyone discovered it right around the same time, even though it was already the third book. Right as they started talking about the movies, and then they show these pieces of footage of people rushing into bookstores to get the latest copy and people waiting in line for movie premieres. And I was absolutely part of that. I grew up in Alaska, so as you can imagine, it was different, right? It was smaller, but there was that same level of energy and enthusiasm, even in a kind of far-flung destination like Alaska. And I can tell you, I remember midnight screenings with my dad because I was only 14 and couldn't go to the movies on my own. Waiting in line. I remember the eighth movie came out. I think I said, that's my last midnight movie premiere. I'm not going to do that anymore. That was a thing I did for Harry Potter, and it's exhausting and it's lovely. Yeah. And that was the chapter. So getting to see all of that, and then also hearing all of the kind of behind the scenes emotions and memories from the actors was really delightful because it was very much for them equally important and instrumental in their lives. Well, probably more so. I don't know. They're not doing a podcast and we are. So who knows whose life was impacted more by Harry Potter.
True. Probably still theirs, but yeah. It actually got me thinking. So you started picking up Harry Potter in your preteens, right?
I was in 7th grade, so I would have been 13.
Yeah. So I didn't pick up Harry Potter till I was a freshman in college. And so I know. So I started going.
You missed it.
Yes, I totally did. So I started thinking, and I have a new theory. So I called a couple of my friends. So I was a voracious reader. We talked about this, right? We both went to the library. We were book nerds, and I was happily a book nerd. I always read 100 books during the summer, all that stuff. But I did not read Harry Potter. I was from a small town in Oklahoma, Southern Baptist, Assembly of God. there were like whispers about it and how it was like witchcraft and wizardry. And I lived with my grandfather, but he didn't honestly care. Like he was super religious, but for some reason I could have read the book. And I have a vivid memory, Valerie, and I want to go back and like push me to the book, and I saw it, and I swear somewhere on the book it said the boy who lived. I don't know, maybe it didn't, maybe I made that up. But in my mind, I see Harry Potter, the original like artwork of little Harry Potter, and I was like, that looks interesting. And then I was like, nah, no, I'm gonna be a rule follower. I'm not gonna read it, Oh my gosh. So, but my friends didn't either. So my best friend Kit, he didn't read it. My best friend Brandy, she didn't read it. And it wasn't until college when Kit picked it up and my brother picked it up. And they both were like, no, you've got to read this. And so immediately I started reading it and borrowing my friend Kit's books and started doing the midnight premieres. I think it was maybe 5 whenever I started going to the, maybe 5 or 6, maybe 5 or 6 when I started going to the midnight premieres. But I have a theory, and I would love it if anyone listening told us. Sorry, I know this is a long one, but you're 32, correct? Or 31?
34.
You're 34?
Yeah, we're the same age.
Oh, I thought you were 2 years younger than me. Dang. Okay.
No.
Well, there goes my theory, because I was talking to my friends.
Okay.
And a lot of the people said, I think a lot of the people who picked it up as kids often were 2 years younger. Like they were the ones that picked it up the most.
No, we're the same age, and I distinctly remember her name was Ashley. I still remember her last name. I don't know if she's married, so I won't say her full name.
Okay.
I'll say it, because if she's married and she hears this, she's going to be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Ashley Borup in 7th grade. We were very good friends at the time, and we had like social studies or something like that, and we had open reading, and she was reading this book, and I can't remember if I asked her about it or if I forgot a book and she let me borrow her copy, but that was it. It was game over. There was no other book in my universe from then on, really. I mean, and I wasn't alone. Like that year, the librarian at our school library loved Harry Potter so much, she would open the library, let us come eat our lunch, and read to us in the library every single day at lunch. So not only would I was not only that nerd who like volunteered at the library, I've worked at libraries. I was the kid who gave up my lunch breaks in middle school to go listen to Harry Potter read by someone else. There is like, it's kind of, I'm not a parent, but like I think about when you're a parent and you see your kid get like sucked into something, you're like, I hope this is a good thing for them, because I really don't know. And it just took over. It just took over my life and my interest. I mean, I was into it. You can, if I go down in my basement and go into the boxes of all my like kid stuff, there's figurines and playing cards, and like I've got costumes, I've got all kinds of stuff that I've made. It became a whole world for me. So I was joking, but I'm not joking. Like, I don't know whose life was impacted more. And I think that in some ways it was good to hear the actors acknowledge that they recognize their role in that. Like they're portraying these characters, bringing them to life for especially the generation that was growing up with them. Yeah. These people are like, they changed our lives as much as our dollars and enthusiasm changed theirs to keep making movies. So yeah, it was like, I was in it from the very beginning, and I was like 13. I grew up with Harry. Yeah. I was 13 when 3 was out. I was 15 when 5 was out, and then they kind of slowed down, but I was 19 when it ended. So when the final book came out. So
there you go.
And I luckily got to experience all of them in Alaska. I was actually up for a summer working in Alaska from college, and took a bus from Denali to Anchorage to the only Barnes and Noble in the state to be at the Barnes and Noble for the book release.
I love
it
that.
Was like, I'm not going to get a copy of Deathly Hallows on the day it comes out. I've gotten every other book that I can on the day it comes out. Yeah. Come on, people.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, no, we are the same age, but that I break your quiz or your
my theory.
Your poll. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Huh. Yeah. No, I'm super disappointed. I wish I had. I feel like it could have like helped me so much, because there's so many people in the story, like everyone, that I like relate to, and I can only imagine in the ways that it would have affected me. So, but just nobody in my grade was reading it. I probably would have easily been swayed to read it. But yeah, so it wasn't until, I think 18 or 19, my freshman year. And then of course, I read the first book and was like, what am I doing with my life not reading this? And became instantly obsessed.
Yeah. So tell me this, in the reunion, they talk about how, and I think it's actually Ivana Lynch who says like, this is a story that resonates with so many people because it's for a bunch of people who feel like they don't belong. Mm-hmm. Did you feel that way?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, my story is probably a little bit more dramatic than some people's. I mean, I felt a little bit like Neville, where like I lived with my grandfather. I felt a little bit like Harry because I didn't have parents. I was an orphan. Felt a little bit like Luna because I was just, a little odd, a little like different. So, I mean, 100% I did. What about you?
So I actually did not feel that way about it.
Hmm.
When they said that, it didn't ring true for me, only because it was so mainstream. Or I don't know, I'm at some point I finally just like didn't care what other people thought, and so
Hmm.
it didn't matter that I was on the outside. I didn't feel like I needed to find a place to fit,
Yeah.
so I didn't feel like I wasn't fitting in. Maybe that's like the 34-year-old Valerie, like
Yeah.
projecting backward in time, because I certainly did care what kids thought of me and I wanted to be liked and all that, but I didn't ever feel like it was a story for people who didn't fit in, or that I resonated with it for that reason.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess I do know what you mean. Hmm. Because I feel like so many people read Harry Potter. You know what I mean? Whether you were popular or a misfit or whatever.
Yeah, and maybe her description is accurate, and it goes to show how much kids go through that phase of just
Mm,
not feeling like they fit.
yeah.
But I guess I didn't have that insight into myself as a kid to be like,
Right.
these people are like me because they don't fit in either.
No, yeah,
That there were
totally.
lots of other books that were like that.
Okay, yeah. No, I didn't feel that way either. I didn't catch that. I do think it gave me comfort in that way, but I don't think even as a 19-year-old I thought like this is a world meant for me or something. Like that definitely wasn't.
Hmm.
I wasn't that smart.
Yeah. So what else did you
Hmm.
get? What'd you pick up from the reunion?
Sure. I honestly think my favorite part was Tom and Emma. Actually, I had two favorite parts. Tom and Emma, that was adorable. She had a crush on him. It was so cute.
Okay, I'm gonna lay it down now, people.
Okay.
I believe that in like 5 to 10 years, I can't say exactly when, it's gonna come out that they secretly got married years ago. Like maybe in the future from when we're recording this, they are the that's the relationship you look for.
Yeah.
Like that kind of support and encouragement and love and admiration for one another. Like that's what people should be looking for in their lives, I
Yeah.
think. I mean, that's a personal thing. Like I think they're secretly going to get married, and then it'll come out and everyone will be like, all the shippers will be like, we knew it.
I hope you are right because they were adorable. Like you could just see like the love and admiration. And whenever she was like, they were like trying to say like they were just friends. I believe them, but I think they both still have like a little, there's something going on there. So, what about Dan and Helena? Speaking of sparks flying.
I know it was a little bit saucy in a cute way, in a very
Yeah,
cute way.
absolutely. I felt like there was mutual flirting going back and forth. So I love that like she definitely entertained the flirting and his like crush.
Yeah, I actually think I was thinking about that because she just seems like such a lovely person, despite all these
Yeah.
characters that she plays. I think she's just genuinely a beautiful, lovely, encouraging, warm person, and people can't help but love her. And so everyone kind of just picks up that love that she gives out to people and like gives it back. And in the case of Dan, it was like a little schoolboy crush on like
Yeah.
a older woman. And I have to applaud the audacity of writing that note to her about if you were 10 years
Right?
older, in his like autograph note to her that they hang, like she and Tim Burton hang in their bathroom, their washroom in London, because
Yes.
that's where they live.
Well, and like the funny, they were like the inside joke going back and forth. She's like, it's okay. You can say it now. It's appropriate now that he's not, 17.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly people when you come of age, there are people who have big age gaps in their relationships, but I think I thought it was really cute. I love that she brought her teeth. I love that
Oh,
she,
right?
I mean, and she put the teeth in, and you were like, oh my God, it's Bellatrix.
I know.
It's her.
Yeah.
And she like it kind of like putting that into her, like it just made her character come back to life. The same thing was true with Ray Fiennes when he was sitting there and you saw him become Voldemort in the chair in the interview. And you're like,
Yes.
oh my
Yes.
God, to watch that actor do his method, incredible,
Yeah.
incredible. And he is super talented. I knew that before he was Voldemort, but
Yeah.
so good. Which makes me want to make another point. Like a lot of people
Mm.
talk about how incredible it is that these young actors became so talented and they're all such great people. And there were certainly many of them that were doing projects before Harry Potter. But I think it's important to consider how they spent 10 years working with the best actors of the generation as the adults.
Mm-hmm.
It's like apprenticeships, basically. Like they got to sit there as kids and watch the masters work. Of course, they're going to get better. Of course, their raw talent is going to be like honed to be better. I mean, we see that with all of them have been done. Well, Rupert hasn't done very many projects since then, but Tom's done things, Dan's done things, Emma's done things, and they've all been great. I mean, I don't know the name of the actor who plays Dean. He's in Foundation on Apple TV right now, which is freaking awesome. He's really good in it. He's only got a very small role, but like, I was like, that's Dean. I know who that is. So they all went on, but like they learned that from getting to work with such incredible actors. And it just shows like how important, especially in the trades, any sort of trade of which acting is, I would say, a trade or a craft. It's very important that you learn from the masters.
Well, and they didn't know that they were masters. So they were able to learn from these people kind of without the jitters, without any of that. So they had no idea that they were the best of the best. They were just kids.
Yeah, I like how Dan's first like celebrity moment when they brought in a new actor was Gary Oldman, who is also super talented and fantastic. But like Gary Oldman, of all the people he was working with, Maggie Smith, Alan Rickman, I mean, names that are household names even outside the British theater world. And it's Gary Oldman that he picked. I mean, Gary Oldman's great. I can't deny that. But it's just funny that's I think they probably each had that with one of the actors at some point, but that's the one for him. Of course, it seems like Dan in some ways did get starstruck more, right? He was very awed by Gary Oldman. He develops a crush on Helena Bonham Carter. It kind of just in his nature maybe to be a little bit more starstruck.
Yeah, maybe so. He even tells Emma, like, be cool, be cool.
Yeah, the Gary chat.
Worried that they wouldn't, they wouldn't be cool in front of him.
They'd be too like starstruck, even though that was pure projection. That was all him being nervous.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the only other note that I had from the reunion, just so that we don't spend an entire episode on it, is it was really interesting, and this is something my husband pointed out, that they didn't really address how the actors, many of them kind of did like sharp lefts after Harry Potter. Like Dan went on and did some really unusual projects and is now doing that show about the Oregon Trail. I think it's called Miracle Workers. Emma went to Brown and cut off all her hair. Rupert kind of stopped doing anything and had a kid, and then Tom became TikTok famous. Like they didn't really address like the in between, right? Because it's not just about the reunion in Harry Potter. It's like what this has meant in our lives and where we've gone since then. They didn't really cover that at all, which I thought that was a good point my husband made, and wanted to make that point as well, because I would love to hear them talk about what they've worked on since and how Harry Potter affected their lives and all that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like they kept that separate on purpose, you know?
Yeah. Have to have something to talk
to keep it about
40-year reunion, 30-year reunion, 30 years.
Right.
Because in 10 years, that's when the final movie will come out 20 years earlier. So it'll be the 30th anniversary of Sorcerer's Stone and the 20th anniversary, or the 10th and the 20th, whatever. You get it. They're 10 years apart, the movies. So they'll be able to do another reunion in 10 years, and we will maybe be here for it. We'll get through all 7 books and all the movies and everything, and we'll then, years later, you'll have a new episode in your feed from us talking about the latest reunion of Harry Potter.
Love that.
Okay, so do we want to dive into the book?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so as a reminder, if this is your first episode that you're listening to, thanks for joining us. We are reading Harry Potter backwards. So we are still in Deathly Hallows. You can't see it, but I'm holding up the book. It is super thick. We are almost a third of the way through, but we're going backwards. So we start by reading the last sentence of the chapter, and then we read the chapter, and then we go back a chapter, and last sentence, chapter, and so on backwards through the book. So we are going to be covering 3 chapters in the remainder of this episode. Do you want to give us a recap of the first one?
Absolutely. All right. So we have chapter 29, The Lost Diadem. So Neville finds Harry, Hermione, and Ron for the first time at Hogshead Inn, the bar, and it's ran by Aegforth. He's super excited to see them, and he begins to update them everything that's been happening at Hogwarts, like all the horrors. He has like his face has like bruises on it and slashes. So he leads them from the bar to the room of requirements, where Dumbledore's army has been camping out. They're all just sitting there waiting on him. And then the army, much to Harry's kind of dismay, ends up helping them and figuring out that the item they're looking for is the Ravenclaw diadem. they decide to go into the castle, and Luna Lovegood helps Harry. They sneak out and they go to the Ravenclaw common room to see the statue with the diadem on it, but they end up getting caught by Electo Caro.
Yep. And the last sentence of this chapter reads, "The sloping-shouldered figure of Electo Caro was standing before him, and even as Harry raised his wand, she pressed a stubby forefinger to the skull and snake branded on her forearm." Mm. I'm glad we don't have to read what happens after that, because it was intense, okay? You can hear it in previous episodes. This is a great chapter. A lot of stuff, a lot of movement, I feel, in this chapter.
100%. Yeah. Starting with our man Neville, him stepping up, him literally becoming the leader of Dumbledore's army and just not putting up with any nonsense from any of these evil leaders. Love to see that from him.
Yep, the Neville fan club is still going strong. I am super excited to keep moving through this story of Harry Potter focusing on Neville a little bit. I marked several points in the initial part of this chapter where they're walking down the passageway back to Hogwarts, where Neville is just awesome. He's just been he's such a different character than what people have in their minds, or what they remember of him as an early character in the books, being a kind of, nerdy, out of place kid who didn't really have any friends, because he's basically leading Dumbledore's army.
Yeah, 100%. And I love, he's still the same guy though, where he has this enthusiasm whenever he sees, the gang. He sees all three of them and is just so excited and is like, I told them you would come. I knew you were coming. And Neville is like hope to me. I know Harry Potter is the hope, right? But Neville though is just is more encompasses that hope, because he just always believes, and maybe encompasses belief, because he always believes that he believes in Harry. He always believes in Harry, which I think I've talked about before, but it shows up here again.
Yeah, and you have to wonder why he didn't become their friend. Like, was it from Sorcerer's Stone when he stands up to them that they just, anyway, because I'm thinking, I had this friend in London who, at the very end of my year living in London, he and I went out for dinner, and he was like, I always wish I had stayed friends with you and some of your other friends. And I was like, I wish you had too. We always wanted you to hang out with us, and we just don't know why that happened. And so I think sometimes that does just happen. And maybe it's not a conscious decision on anybody's part, but that people just don't become friends, or they don't stay friends, and there's no real reason for that. Because think how different the story would be if there had been 4 of them, and if Neville, with this character development that he's had, would have been part of that journey. He becomes such a strong ally for them. They probably could have gotten it done a lot sooner with Neville, because he's smart in a different way and very passionate about the mission.
I almost wonder if that would have been too many people though, because I do think Neville starts to be kind of a leader, or almost like a alpha or something, you know what I mean? Where maybe that dynamic wouldn't have worked. And that's why maybe J.K. Rowling didn't include it, because she tried to picture them together and it just didn't work. He needed his own way to lead.
Yeah, and the dynamics of children in groups, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but when there's 3 friends, they can all be friends. When there's 4, there's 2 pairs of best friends. It's just a different dynamic. And so maybe that's part of what she saw and recognized in having just 3.
Yeah, 100%.
Loved the story about Neville's gran kicking butt when the Death Eaters show up for her.
Yeah, absolutely. She is a cool old granny, which I don't feel like we learned until this half of the book, or this basically few chapters of the book. You start to see, his grandma's cool. She may have been kind of strict and scary to him as a kid, but you actually see she's very powerful. And yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah, and one thing that I would say is a theme that isn't necessarily overt in any of the books, but how a child looking like their parents or behaving like their parents can have an impact on the people around them. For example, Snape always sees Lily in Harry's eyes. That's probably the same thing that happens for Neville's gran. When she looks at this grandchild she has to raise, because her son and his wife have been rendered incapable of even caring for themselves. And that tension that comes from that sort of relationship. Because the main other scene with her is in Order of the Phoenix, when they run into the Longbottoms at St. Mungo's. And she does not come across warm or proud or anything of Neville in that scene. But by now, he's been fighting and she's proud of him. And we see that in the later chapters that we've already covered.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to have a little more backstory on that too. Like, was she kind of mean to him at home? Was she, like what was it like living with
Hmm.
his gran?
Probably a lot like the Dursleys, like I'm going to whip you into
Mm-hmm.
shape, is a
Yeah.
sort of general philosophy. In the case of the Dursleys with Harry, it was I'm going to whip you into being a Muggle, and not whip literally, but you know what I'm saying. She
Yes.
was trying to
Yep.
make him into his gran was trying to make Neville into a stronger wizard, and maybe that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't what he really needed to be a stronger wizard. He needed friendship and warmth and support, and things that all kids need.
Right. Yeah. What about Ginny's moment getting jealous?
Hmm. Yeah, that is a really very interesting little dynamic after, well, we haven't gotten there yet since we're jumping around, but like the way that she and Harry end things, which we will
Mm-hmm.
eventually get to in this season,
Yeah.
it's kind of just very complicated. They clearly have like a complicated dynamic, her and Harry, because they can't be
Yes.
obvious, but it is very obvious to the audience, us, and probably everyone else in the
Yes.
room.
Yeah. So basically, for those who didn't read the chapter, this is where Ginny gets a little jealous. So Harry needs somebody to take him into the Ravenclaw common room, and Cho immediately is like, "Oh, I'll do it. I can get you in." And Ginny's like, no, I think Luna wants to take him. Luna, you
Luna
want to
can
take
take
him?
him.
Luna's like, yeah.
Okay.
And Cho's like, oh man, she has like a disappointed look on her face, and then
Mm-hmm.
Ginny's like, all, that's my
Yep.
man.
Yep.
You
Yep.
cannot go in there with him.
Nope. Don't trust her.
Yeah.
The other thing that jumped out at me in the same part of this scene as they're talking about why Harry has come back to Hogwarts is the lack of awareness that these students still have about what's really at stake. So Harry
Mm,
says, "We haven't come back to stay." And Luna arrives and she says, "We're going to fight the Carrows out of Hogwarts." And they don't realize that the world is so much bigger than Hogwarts. This isn't about
mm,
Hogwarts, which is very much the
yeah.
final transition that these young people are going to take is our school was our world and now there's a bigger world that we're going to go join, and the battle is part of that transition for these particular characters. But I just thought it was interesting how so many of the people in the room still just think it's about Hogwarts and like making school great again. And it's not.
Yeah.
It's about a much bigger issue, and Ron kind of has to be like, guys, we're trying to defeat Voldemort. Like it is not
Right.
about not getting detention anymore. This is the life and
Right.
death, end of the world kind of stuff. Just a very interesting kind of moment that I had never picked up on when I was reading it in past readings.
Yeah, I think that also shows you just the how much more mature and how much more the big three are dealing with. You know what I mean? Like they're dealing with the whole entire world, muggles, everybody saving the world, where, most of the kids their age, although they are in the war, it's a little less maybe not important. It's important to them, but it's just not as big.
The stakes are
We're not
lower.
just exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about the Ravenclaw common room.
Yeah, go for it. I
This
know
was
you love
great.
it.
I loved getting to go into the Ravenclaw common room, and it made me wish a little bit that I were not so Slytherin. I am definitely part Ravenclaw, but I lead Slytherin because this common room sounds awesome. It is a tower. It
Mm-hmm.
has huge windows looking out over the surrounding mountains. It has a domed ceiling with stars painted in it and midnight blue carpet. Like this is my dream room they're describing. In fact, I have seen several Airbnbs around the world that try and do this room, and it is still cool even
Really?
in the Muggle world.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the room for me. Actually, it's funny again. Like we talked about how Dumbledore says they sort too young in Hogwarts when he's
Mm-hmm.
talking to Snape, and I feel the same. Like I identified as a Slytherin very young, and now I'm like, well, you should have let me see the common room because I would have been a Ravenclaw. I would have worked harder in my school. No, I did work hard in school, but like I would have leaned into that part of myself to end up in this common room.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Valerie is big on space. She has a space tourism website. She's obsessed with it. She calls herself a space nerd. So this absolutely fits
This
your
is the room for me.
personality.
I can't. Who am I
Mm-hmm.
living underground? Come on, that's just not me. But hey, that's where the Slytherins are. I got to be with my people.
I understand. I understand. I also probably I think Ravenclaw would be my second choice. Everyone's so smart, and you just sit around talking. I mean, that's literally what we're doing right
Or
now,
reading,
and I
which
love
is
it.
what we
Yeah,
just did.
exactly. Like, yeah, exactly.
Do you have anything else in this chapter?
Let's see. Yeah, you know what? Ron, it's on page 578. Basically, he knows the 5 exceptions to Gamp's law. He's slowly starting to pick up the things Hermione's throwing at him. You know, he's getting a little smarter.
Yeah.
She's rubbing off on him.
I
So
thought about
you start
noting
to
that.
see him. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a really like clever line that she threw in there for a little bit of lightness, which we've talked about being a tool that J.K. Rowling uses throughout this end of the book, and that he listens when Hermione talks. He just doesn't always act like he's listening.
Right. Yes. 100%. All right. Did you have anything else?
I did not. That's all I had in this chapter. So let's turn it back a little bit and jump to chapter 28, which is the missing mirror.
Yeah. So in this chapter, you have Harry, Ron, Hermione, and they apparate into Hogsmeade. It sets off the charms that the Death Eaters have set up. And they are under the invisibility cloak, though. They can't see them. The Death Eaters are running around trying to figure out who did it. They immediately assume it is Harry, and they begin to look for him. Harry ends up having to set off his Patronus, and so they are like, oh, it's Harry. But Abe Forth opens his bar, and he saves them, claiming it was him, and that he has a goat as a Patronus, and that's why they thought it was him, telling them they're stupid. He tells the story of his own life and Dumbledore's life, and then basically that leads us into what we just talked about, where Neville comes into the bar.
Yep, and the final sentence of this chapter. Out of it, his hair overgrown, his face cut, his robes ripped, clambered the real Neville Longbottom, who gave a roar of delight, leapt down from the mantelpiece, and yelled, "I knew you'd come. I knew it, Harry."
Yeah, see? There's that faith again. He just believes in him.
Yep, he just knows. I want to come back to goats. We'll come back to goats at some point. I've got it marked in my book. But I want to talk more about a lot of different things that happen. Again, this chapter feels like it's a lot of like moving through stuff. In some ways it is, right? Because the final chapter we're going to cover in this episode is about Harry Voldemort realizing that they're going after Horcruxes, and Harry finally realizing where the final Horcrux is. And so there's these chapters that we're moving through right now, which are just kind of like getting us to the next important thing that needs to happen, which is Harry finding the final Horcrux. But there's a lot of little details that are sprinkled throughout this chapter that I think are worth mentioning or pointing out. The first one that I had was about the invisibility cloak. So I have personally taken interest in that particular Hallow and its abilities. And they cast a charm. They say Accio Cloak, and the cloak doesn't even attempt to be taken. The spell doesn't even work. Yeah. So this is a very cool object that I just really like seeing it from this perspective that we're going, where I know a lot about it. I look forward to going back into the Tale of the Three Brothers to hear of its origin, whether or not that's actually a real story or myth Dumbledore has already thrown into question. But I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I did too.
Go ahead.
No, it's good. Go ahead.
The other thing that jumped out at me right off the bat in this chapter, as Aberforth saves them and they come into the Hogshead and he sends them up the back stairs, is they end up in a room. And this room is incredibly important, though probably you would miss it if you're reading quickly because you want to finish this incredible book. This is very likely the room where the prophecy was made that started it all. Where Sybil Trelawney came for her job interview, gave a prophecy to Dumbledore, Albus Dumbledore, and Snape was waiting outside. And the reason I think that this is that room is, where else would Dumbledore go in this building than the place where he can see his sister?
Oh.
Which means that this room is super important. And the fact that we finally learn the story of the Dumbledore family, and that Rita Skeeter was pretty dang accurate in her telling of that in The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore, is very incredible. And it's a room, you don't think as much about the spaces that things occur in, but it's fascinating that this is that room. And you would almost miss it if you didn't pay attention to they're just in a room. No, this is a very important room to Harry's life.
Yeah, absolutely. I do love how that happens a lot in this book, where everything means something. Speaking of, did you notice, it's page 561, and it says, the firelight made the grimy lenses of Abeforth's glasses momentarily opaque. A bright white, I miswrote that, and Harry remembered the blind eyes of the giant spider Aragog.
Oh, no, I did not catch that in this reading.
Like, why? You know what I mean? That's just an interesting thing to bring back all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
I just found it interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I wonder if I don't know. I don't know. That's an interesting analogy that she kind of is, or a simile she's kind of drawing between
Mm-hmm.
Aberforth and Aragog, but I don't quite understand it now that you say it. Well spotted.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
Well spotted.
Maybe maybe if anyone has an opinion on
Mm-hmm.
that, send us an email or a DM because
Leave it in your review when you leave us a review.
yeah, there you go.
Oh, another thing I caught this kind of on the next page in our copies that we're reading is
Uh-huh.
the Aberforth says secrets and lies. Albus learned them at our mother's knee, which to me says
Yes.
throughout this book, Harry has been
Mm-hmm.
very much dealing with the anger of what Dumbledore put him through, Albus put him through, and
Yeah.
how he didn't tell him everything and he made him figure it all out himself. That's actually just Dumbledore's nature from how he was raised, not from him learning not to trust people. He was learning it from his mother, who was hiding their sister, all the dynamics that they had in their family. So it actually kind of, to me, gave me a sense of empathy for Albus Dumbledore for all the times he didn't tell Harry things. He learned not to tell people things. In some ways, he's kind of like Voldemort like that. He does not trust everyone with the information that they might need to know to do the right thing. We could say, and I think it's in the chapter we're going to cover next, Voldemort's like, I'm not going to tell Snape why I think Harry's going to break into the castle. Maybe if he had, they could have actually stopped him. But because he doesn't trust anyone with all the information, he ends up being vulnerable. And Albus does the same thing in this case. He doesn't give Harry the information. He lets him discover it and it works out for the best. But Dumbledore could have known that was going to be the case.
Yeah, see, I took that sentence a little bit differently. Learn secrets at our mother's knee. I felt like she told him so many secrets. Like she told him probably things that a young wizard shouldn't have known, which kind of made him who he was.
Interesting. We definitely read that differently.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. To me, it was like you keep secrets and you tell lies to protect things. Mm-hmm. And that translated into the way that Dumbledore behaved toward Harry from the time he was a very small child.
Yeah, your version makes more sense. Mine just sounds cooler.
It does sound really cool. That's how Dumbledore is so good at magic.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
He's good at magic. He's just good at magic.
He's just good. Yeah, and he continues to talk about how, like, Abeforth is like, Dumbledore doesn't care about you. You're going to die. And you kind of get to see Harry start thinking about, like, he's like, you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I've gone this far. This is what I'm doing. This is my course. I'm on it. You're not going to convince me otherwise, no matter what Dumbledore, what Albus did or didn't do. I'm on this path.
Yeah, there's actually some foreshadowing two times in this chapter. That's one of them. The other one is before this, when Harry decides to cast his Patronus, and he says he would do anything to avoid the Dementor's kiss, no matter the outcome. Which means he's acknowledging they may catch me, they may turn me over to Voldemort, he may kill me, and it will be better than being subjected to the Dementor's kiss. He's already coming to terms with that.
But the second sentence is him mostly thinking of Hermione and Ron. Mm-hmm. So really, it was more of a selfish act. Like, yes, obviously he doesn't want that, but I saw it more as like, oh, I just don't want these two to have to suffer that way.
But that's exactly why he turns himself over to Voldemort later. Yeah. It's kind of like you can pick up on that little times that Harry is coming to terms with the fact that this may be the final outcome. I mean, that's what the prophecy says, right? It says neither may live while the other survives. So he's finally kind of, to the audience, articulating that.
Right. But he doesn't know that yet. I mean, he doesn't officially know.
He hasn't come to terms with it in its full implications until, of course, Snape shares the final piece of information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Overall, I just, hearing that story, like, you could tell even Harry's uncomfortable. He felt sick. Ron was uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. Hearing that story is just so tragic. And you kind of like, I wonder, it's interesting to see where Albus went as an adult, because he could have gone many ways. He could have hated Muggles, which I guess for a hot second he kind of did. He's like, let's take over the world so that we can be, we can do whatever we want to. But he ends up not hating Muggles, and he wants to protect Muggles, which is, it's interesting he did choose good. You know, he may have made some mistakes, but at the end of the day, he did choose good over power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a very different weight to that story that Aberforth tells them when he's telling them from his personal experience, as opposed to when we read it from Rita Skeeter's perspective. But I'll be curious to see how Harry reacts to the story the first time he hears it. Because in some ways it's the same story. They're just hearing it again and validating that the story that he read in the book was true. That was one thing I wanted to keep an eye on, is like, I think he feels sick after he reads it too. Not just when he hears it from Aberforth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And what about Dumbledore and the Hallows? Like, was that always a plan on Dumbledore's part to resurrect his mother? Like, even whenever he was trying to do the Hallows to be more powerful, I wonder if he wanted to resurrect his mother.
I thought it was for his sister.
Oh.
I always thought he wanted to resurrect his sister. Well, no. So actually, I think we're going to have to get there. Okay. I don't know when it's going to be explained, or if I didn't catch it when we read it this time. But I believe Dumbledore says, he explains what their focus was for each of the Hallows. He says, the Elder One, so we can win all the battles, because he and Grindelwald are working together. The Resurrection Stone, because Grindelwald wanted to raise an army of Inferi. And we didn't really care about the cloak because we were both so capable of transfiguring ourselves. So I don't know that he actually had a thought of what the stone would do for him personally.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe that wasn't until after his sister died, like you said. Because we know later he... What?
Keep going.
Okay, I was going to say that's why he had the stone on his hand. He put the ring on his hand because he became overcome with the urge to bring back his sister and mother.
Yes. I think his great regrets in life are that he did not, especially his sister, he could not protect them. But I am curious. I'm going to flip back while we're chatting and see if I can pull that part out. Because I know that he addresses it and I just don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. Yeah, he may in the King's Cross, King's Cross Again chapter. And while you're looking, the whole tale is sad because I know family and you should protect your family, but I don't truly understand why they didn't turn in their sister. Like, what was so bad about St. Mungo's? You know what I mean? Like, she probably would have been safer and happier there because, she could get the care she needed. I don't know.
Okay, I found it. I agree with you, by the way. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about Neville's parents. Like, there are people who need professional care, and that shouldn't be something that has a stigma. It should be something that we encourage and help support families through, because it's always hard when that happens to a family member. Okay.
Yeah.
So here we go. Yeah. At the heart of our schemes, the Deathly Hallows, how they fascinated him, how they fascinated both of us. The unbeatable wand, the weapon that would lead us to power. The Resurrection Stone. To him, though I pretended not to know it, it meant an army of Inferi. To me, I confess, it meant the return of my parents and the lifting of all responsibility from my shoulders. And the cloak? Somehow we never discussed the cloak much. Both of us could conceal ourselves well enough without the cloak, the true magic of which, of course, is that it can be used to protect and shield others as well as its owner. I thought that if we ever found it, it might be useful in hiding Ariana, but our interest in the cloak was mainly that it completed the trio. So there you go.
So it does protect.
Yep. And going back to your original question about the stone, he wanted to bring back his parents so that they could take Ariana from him and he could just go do what he wanted. Which is why he feels like an ashamed schoolboy when he's telling Harry the truth about himself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's dark. All right.
Yeah. On that note, goats. Should we talk about goats? And then we can jump back to another chapter. So the main thing I wanted to point out is that I want to go back, and I'm not going to do it because we're doing this in a certain way, and hopefully we get to do all 7 seasons. I am super curious about this Aberforth goat connection. Like, they claim in the first book, as my memory serves, about like unusual charming of goats or something. Like, I just want to know, I think it's meant to be, it's meant to be an allusion to a rather rude implication about certain types of people in Britain and sheep. I think that's what it's always kind of meant to be. And I won't say any more than that because it will get us the explicit rating on our podcast. But if you don't know, ask your parents or Google it, whatever age you are. But I don't think that's the case. I think he just really likes goats. And you know what? I know people who really like goats. They like goat yoga and they like goat farms and stuff. And that's not weird, even though everyone in the Wizarding world pretends like it's weird. Now, it is not good to do unusual charms on goats. That's fair. But I love that Aberforth has a goat as his Patronus, because it's like a little thread and it runs all the way back to Sorcerer's Stone, I believe. And I look forward to tracing that tiny little thread about Aberforth and his goats, because I just think it's
that was a good catch. Yeah,
delightful, cute. I think it's not nefarious. I don't think it's illicit. I think he just really likes goats, people.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, so let's jump back in time. We've got one more chapter to do. This one's a fast one, so we're going to run a little bit long this episode, but we appreciate you sticking with us because we're going to do one more chapter before we're done.
All right. Chapter 27, The Final Hiding Place. This chapter begins with the big three on the back of a dragon after escaping from Gringotts and retrieving a Horcrux, Helga Hufflepuff's cup. They get to safety, they get on the beach, and Harry has a flash of Voldemort realizing they know about his other Horcruxes, giving away that the last one is hidden at Hogwarts. The chapter ends with them heading to Hogsmeade to find a way into the castle.
Yep, and the final sentence reads, Harry pulled the cloak down as far as it would go, and together they turned on the spot into the crushing darkness. Very foreboding.
So, beautiful though.
Yeah.
Crushing darkness. I love that.
Yeah. So what did you pick up in this chapter?
It all happens so very quickly. I did like, so they weren't able to retrieve the sword, to be able to destroy the Horcrux, but I did find it interesting going back to our man Neville. He was able to. The sword came to him in the end, and it wasn't coming to them when they needed it to destroy the Horcrux.
By the way, a really quick sidebar. In the reunion, they showed a clip of that scene. And I had never noticed before that when Neville looks in the hat, it shines on his face, and you hear the sound of the sword. I cannot wait to rewatch the movie in full, because it's this tiny little moment where Neville looks into the sorting hat and sees the sword waiting for him. It kind of, when you read the books, you know that that's going to happen. But like for the audience of a moviegoer, they didn't know. Anyway, I just thought that was really cool. Keep going. Back
that is
chapter.
Cool. Yes, I know. I want to watch the 7th movie, but I obviously don't want to because I want to wait until we're done with this season. So killing me a little bit.
7th movie and 8th movie. We got there'll be a bunch of movies to watch.
Yes.
One of my favorite scenes, speaking of the movies, one of my favorite scenes in the movies happens in this chapter, which is a very short 10 pages. It might be one of the shortest chapters in this book. It goes very fast.
Okay.
And it's the scene where they just climbed out of the lake and they are putting Dittany on their clothing, on their wounds, and like having a snack and just like resting for a hot second. And in the movies, it's a really, really cool shot. It's called a oneer. It means it's just one camera shot. And the cameraman is moving around the three of them as they change clothing. And I've always loved scenes like that in movies. There's one in White Christmas where Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye are changing. It's just a real testament to acting ability to not only be putting on clothing, changing, delivering lines, watching this camera move around without ever breaking. It just works really well. It's not what's in the book, which is a very rare time where the deviation from the book is actually something I prefer. But I marked it just because it's one of my favorite scenes in the entire 8th movie, because it's such a beautiful piece of film making. Anyway, just had to give a shout out to the big three actors who made that one of the best scenes, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I'll have to look for that, once we finish.
We're getting there.
At least half of this series, right?
Yeah, we're getting there.
What about Bellatrix and Lucius? So Bellatrix and Lucius threw others behind them in their race for the door, and those who were left were slain, all of them.
I marked that also because I was like, these two are just really self-centered, and like they are self-interested. And I thought, going back to the reunion, it was good stuff that came out of there. They spent a whole bunch of time in that talking about how Draco is the product of Lucius. And Lucius is this very almost psychopathic, neglectful, abusive father. And it's no surprise that Draco turns out such a dark character himself. And this is kind of that case in point. Like Lucius, I think Narcissa is the heart of their relationship, because she's the one who tries to save Draco, and she takes the two of them and walks them off the bridge at the end of the 8th movie. Like down the bridge, not off the bridge, obviously. You know, like she's the one that connects the family and makes it a family, because Lucius just doesn't care about anyone but himself. It's very clear from that behavior, and Bellatrix, we already knew, was like that.
Right. Although, in their defense, if I, was hanging out with a really super evil guy and I knew he was about to be really mad, I'd be pushing people too. Like, at that point, like, it's you or me, man. I'm out.
Yeah. And in the next, literally just a couple pages later, Voldemort is thinking about how he can't believe that Harry's figured out that they were Horcruxes and he's going after them. And it was a grave mistake to trust Bellatrix and Malfoy. And so I think they do know they're in trouble. They've always been on his list for first the diary and now the cup. And I guess I agree. Like I probably would do the same. I'd be like, I'm getting the heck out of here. But I also wouldn't go to battle with the guy. I would literally just like, I'm going to France. You know, I'm leaving. I'm crossing the channel, whatever.
Time to go.
Yeah, I wouldn't stay. I mean, other than the fact that for Malfoy's case, Draco is still at Hogwarts, but I would have just gotten the heck out of Dodge, wait till all shit's loose, and then stay in hiding or come back when everything's over.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see, talking about Voldemort saying he doesn't trust anyone, you see again his downfall. For one, not trusting, but for two, his ego. His ego comes up again and again, assuming he is better than everyone else. No one else is as smart as me. No one else has been to the depths of the castle, speaking of the rumor requirements. Like, he just, they couldn't know about the Gaunts, my house. They couldn't, I guess maybe. Well, they couldn't know about this place.
They couldn't know about the cave. They'll never know about the room of requirement.
Yeah.
Actually, Harry knows about all that stuff. Because Dumbledore knew about most of it. Yep. Yeah, too late. Yeah. The last thing I would say...
and two people found the cave.
Regulus found the cave as well.
Mm-hmm. There we go, yes.
Yep. Regulus found the cave as well. The last thing that I have in this chapter is right at the end of the chapter, they talk about we just need to get going. We just need to get to Hogwarts. It's the last Horcrux that we know that he is not coming for immediately. So Harry says, we just need to get there. We need to go to Hogsmeade and figure out a way to get into the castle. And Hermione in the movie, she doesn't exactly say it this way she does say it this way. We need a plan. And this is in that same scene that I was just describing from the movie that I love, where, Hermione's like, we need to come up with a plan. And Harry's like, when have any of our plans ever worked? Like, that's the line from the movie that's not in the book, but it is very true. Like they plan to get in the ministry. They plan all these things and it never goes according to plan, which shows you need to have a rough idea what you're going for and adjust on the fly. Because every time that at least this three get into anything, it ends up going sideways, which, to be fair, I've learned that in the last 2 years of living, all the best laid plans, right? Like, and it's a new year for us. It's kind of it's something I'm trying to incorporate personally. It's like, you need a plan, but like, when have our plans ever gone according to plan?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else in this chapter?
No, that was it.
All right. That's
a short one.
I had to. It was really short. I will check. I will fact check myself. I'm pretty sure that's probably the shortest chapter in the book, which is why we lumped them all in together. Oh my goodness. What are you wearing?
These are the, what are they called? See, I do this every time. I forget what they're called.
Spectre
I'm horrible Harry. Spectre specs. I knew they're Spectre something. Spectre specs. I'm sorry, guys. My brain doesn't hold certain things in. That's why I'm glad we didn't have to list
this is
all
what
the
happens
actors and stuff.
When you start reading Harry Potter when you're 19 years old. Come on.
Okay. Now we're getting personal. The reason I am wearing these, though, is we are doing a Gilderoy Lockhart style quiz, and today's is actually our favorite piece of Harry Potter memorabilia.
Yep. So as a reminder, if you listen to every episode of this season, at the end of the season, we're going to do a big social media campaign giveaway thing. And the person who gets the most number of right answers about us, because it's the Gilderoy Lockhart quiz, is going to win a really cool prize. And I have been getting served so many ads on Instagram about cool Harry Potter stuff that I am bookmarking them to put together a really cool prize pack for whoever wins this. So yours, Brie, yours are the Spectre specs, and mine is my wand, which I got at the Wizarding World, of course, where most people get their wands. And I won't go into the long story of this. Maybe I'll do it as an IGTV or something really long form about how my wand is not really my wand anymore. But this is my wand. It sits right above my desk. It's always there. Don't use it for anything. Just love having it around as a piece of my past, piece of something that I love.
Yeah. So if you guys don't know by now, I lived in a camper van for 4 years, and I used these. I think before I lived in a van for a costume. I was obviously Luna Lovegood, and this was the only thing. I mean, I don't have very much memorabilia. You can see my empty wall. Eventually, it would be filled back up, but I didn't have any memorabilia, and I had to convince Sean, my boyfriend, to let me keep these. Like, I would hide them, and he'd be like, "Brie, you do not need these," and I'm like, "I'm not getting rid of them. They're expensive for one. I mean, like $20, but they felt expensive, so I was not getting rid of them."
Yeah, you
They
all can't see
survived.
my desk, but it is covered in various memorabilia from all of the projects I love. So I could not live in a van. That is the answer to that.
True. You need a big storage unit.
We had, well, when we lived on our boat, we had one. So, and our boat was
Right.
bigger than your van. Okay,
Barely.
let's wrap it up here. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate it. If you have enjoyed this episode, we hope you will go to your podcast player of choice and leave us a rating, 5 stars if you really liked us. 5 stars even if you didn't like us, and then leave us a review with the real feedback. The 5 stars are super important for new podcasts like us. They're super important for all podcasts. So if you enjoy this show, you enjoy other shows, give them reviews. They need it. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Anything else we need to cover?
Nope. If there's anything you want to add about the reunion or anything, please give us a shout out via email, podcast at followthebutterflies.com, Instagram, belljarpod, same with Twitter and TikTok.
Yep, we are on the socials. Brie has gotten me on the socials, and we would love to hear from you. We are very excited. We are officially moving forward. New episodes coming out every Tuesday, and we will see you this time next week.
All right. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.